Greetings, citizens, and thanks for tuning in to Nindie Nation. I'm Jeff, and today on episode 141, we're taking a look at every game hitting the Nintendo Switch through the week ending March 20th. You can find Nindie Nation on Twitter, come hang out with us on Discord, or check out the week's new releases with us right here on YouTube every Thursday at 10 p.m. Eastern during our Nindies at Night stream. As usual, we start every episode by taking a look at the games which snuck onto the eShop over the past week. This week is, well, let's just say I'm a creature of habit. So, these are the 5 neglected Nindies that released since episode 140. You see these? These are what released over the past week. Do we? No, we don't need to discuss these. Oh, but I did notice that, for once, PixArt's put some text in the description for one of their releases. Just to make sure we reward that incredible level of effort, here's what Pigs Farts had to say about Handball Payloada.
Discover the famous Handball Payloada game. If you know Payloada, you'll enjoy a realistic, still very playable simulation of the sport. If not, you'll quickly get graps of this game where you hit ball with hand towards a fronton and try to keep it away for your opponent.
Alright, well, things like that just make me want to destroy something. Oh, speaking of which, these are the 12 new releases hitting the Nintendo Switch through Sunday, March 20th. So, the first game releasing this week is Dawn of the Monsters, an arcade brawler featuring gigantic robots and kaiju. It's developed by 13AM Games, who previously released Runbow and Double Cross, and is published by WayForward. All of that led me to write a hyped-up segment where I gushed all over how excited I was to play the game. Then I sat down on Friday night with my new copy of Triangle Strategy and settled in for a nice long weekend of turn-based strategy RPG goodness. But then, I was fortunate enough to receive a copy of Dawn of the Monsters, and as I'm writing this on Sunday evening, I've already put over a dozen hours into this game, and I am freaking hooked. It's so good, you guys. As I mentioned, it's a traditional side-scrolling beat-em-up, and it's broken up into about 40 levels that are each maybe 5 to 10 minutes long. As you are gigantic creatures that tower over skyscrapers, you understandably move very slow, and that's something that this game does quite a bit differently than most. The speed of the game means that you have to be very deliberate with your actions, because if you just mash buttons, you'll be met with a quick demise. However, there are 2 classes of characters, with the humanoid, Ultraman-like robots being much more agile than the kaiju, which you can also play as, so you've got options. All the more reason, then, to take advantage of the gear system that gives you upgradable equipment after each level depending on the score and rank you earn. Furthermore, the combat is quite deep, and even a dozen hours in, I'm still learning new ways to build combos, block and parry, dodge and charge, and leverage the abilities of all 4 unique characters. When you're not working your way through the levels, there's a surprisingly solid story that's told through comic book visuals and excellent voice acting. I don't want to spoil the plot here, but for a beat-em-up, there's a lot of story, and it's really interesting. Especially coming from someone who tends to skip through this kind of comic book narrative, which I have yet to do in Dawn of the Monsters. The difficulty curve is also right where I'd want it to be. Should you find yourself struggling in a level, you can revisit past levels at any time, and with your latest upgrades, you'll earn a much higher grade, which will then dole out even better equipment. I've always liked 13AM Games, but to see how well they've transitioned from making a multiplayer party game to an exploration physics platformer, and now to a heavy brawler that at times almost feels like a wrestling game, just goes to show how talented this studio is. In fact, there's only one real criticism I have of the game, and that's its price. While this is yet another title that I'm sure will be in my top 10 of 2022, it's $30, and after covering so many games for nearly 4 years now, it feels like a $20 or $25 game. That said, there is a lot to do, and I can easily see stretching this game out to 20, 25, maybe even 30 hours if you go back and see all that there is to see, and I think you should. And Limited Run Games currently has a physical copy for $35, which I think is a steal and what I'll be picking up to support the team. If you can't tell, I love Dawn of the Monsters. It really came out of nowhere for me, and ever since I've received a copy, I haven't been able to stop playing it. It's great for dedicated, focused play on the TV, and it's perfect for quick sessions in handheld mode if you want to grind for better scores and equipment. If you love kaiju stuff, manga-inspired art, or just brawlers in general, and $30 isn't too much for you, I think you should absolutely pick it up. If you're on the fence, or if you just want to see more before spending your hard-earned digital dollars, come check it out this week because I will definitely be playing it during Nindies at Night this Thursday. And speaking of beating the crap out of things, look, I love the idea of fighting games, but I haven't been super into any of them since Marvel vs. Capcom or maybe Mortal Kombat 9, so take what I say with a big grain of salt. With all of that said though, Phantom Breaker Omnia by Mages and Rocket Panda Games looks rad. Featuring all the hallmarks one could classify as anime as hell, Phantom Breaker builds on the premise of its 2011 Xbox 360 exclusive version and the definitive edition that released across all platforms in 2013, both of which received mostly average reviews. Omnia features a ton of improvements, including balancing, new training modes, English and Japanese voiceover, upgraded visuals that just, well, look at them, and a totally bitchin' soundtrack that, at the risk of a copyright strike, I'm going to play right now. I don't know what it is about this game that makes me think I'm going to be interested in a fighting game again, or at least get deep into one, but color me intrigued. It releases for $39.99, and I will definitely be looking to some of the fighting game experts out there to see if the reviews stack up and justify the price. You may recall that I often struggle wondering if we should include NIS America games or not. Nippon Ichi Software is huge in Japan, but very niche everywhere else, and their international divisions are significantly smaller. Well, I think the games that they make speak to indie fans, so f*** it, because I really want to talk about The Cruel King and The Great Hero, because it just looks downright charming. Also releasing on Tuesday, coming in at $29.99, this is the follow-up to 2019's Liar Princess and the Blind Prince, though it is not a sequel, and as the previous entry was a puzzle platformer, this week's release is an action RPG. If you like the combat from the first two Paper Mario games, you're going to get a lot of the same here. The gameplay is simple, but always evolving as you, that's Y-U-U, the main character, sets out to become a hero by doing good deeds alongside her dragon protector, Rocky. And just look at this game! How beautiful is this hand-drawn art? You'll get a decent mix of a cute story, exploring and meeting people to help, and then going into caves and dungeons and such to tackle enemies in a very by-the-books RPG formula. I really want to check this game out. Are any of you planning to? If so, let me know. And then last up for Tuesday the 15th, Jolly Rover and Brossom team up to bring MacGuffin's Curse to the Switch, just in time to celebrate its 11th birthday. Another title featuring hand-drawn artwork, MacGuffin's Curse plays out like a top-down puzzle adventure mixed with a hilarious, cartoony, award-winning story. After a museum heist goes awry, MacGuffin finds himself bound to a magic amulet that causes him to turn into a werewolf in the middle of a city on lockdown while they try to find said amulet. You explore over 150 rooms with all kinds of puzzles to solve, all while the witty story plays out alongside your antics. If you happen to get stuck, there's a hint system that's provided by an investigator that apparently despises you, and if you want more, there's over 90 side quests to track down. If you like puzzles, classic top-down adventures, and/or British humor, it's hard not to recommend MacGuffin's Curse for $9.99. Only one game releases on Wednesday the 16th, but the combination of its ridiculous premise and side-scrolling action meets RPG gameplay is earning Wife's Quest a spot on this week's Nindies at Nite. You play as Mia, a sexy warrior, who must rescue her husband Fernando from the clutches of a bunch of skanky monster girls who keep kidnapping him. And if that happens to sound like the plot of an East Asia soft game, well, yeah, that's because it is. It's developed by Pippin Games, a trio of developers from Brazil, and if I've learned anything during my time at Nindie Nation, it's that the Brazilians know how to make great games. For $7.99, you'll hop and bop your way through levels while defeating bosses and learning new abilities. Almost like a Mega Man game, but leaning much more towards an adventure, kinda like the recent Wonder Boy releases. We'll be playing it this Thursday, so stop by if you want to see more of Wife's Quest. We've still got a small but solid list of games to come on the Nindie Nation highway, but before we set the cruise control, let's make note of some of the potholes. Either someone is asleep in the Ultimate Games QA department, or they are deliberately publishing an asset flip, because we've seen Cyberfight go by many different names under PixArts, and when you're copying a PixArts game, yikes. It's been a long time since Kairosoft has reskinned their mobile time waster game, but they're back this week with Boxing Gym Story, an old free-to-play mobile game that is on the Switch for $14. And we've come to learn that one of the latest Nindie Nevers, Cyberstep, has quickly become the de facto publisher for any game that would make a parent realize they need to have a sit-down talk with their son. My Lady Sayo has you playing as the servant to a 12-year-old girl who demands you do naughty things. Because, that's definitely the kind of stuff we want people fantasizing about. Hook Games ripped off Battleship and called it Sea Battle Minimal, fitting given their apparent amount of effort. Jumping Bricks Ball is PixArt's latest example of how even the most basic game design can go horribly wrong. And from the masterminds at T-Bullshit, I was disappointed to learn this week's release was just holding a button while cars go in a straight line. Because I think we can all agree that a brawler based on cross-dressing would be a much better use of the name Drag Clash Pro. Getting back to the world of games that people actually put effort into, Indie Nova has a port of what is apparently the last in a series called Somi's Guilt Trilogy. The Wake is very tricky to nail down, but for the most part, it's a series of puzzles and clues that unravel a mystery spanning 3 generations of a family. I like these puzzle narratives that are all about ciphers and codes, and this one seems intriguing. However, I'd imagine that if you're considering The Wake for $6.99, you should probably start with Replica and Legal Dungeon first. And what other series features an anime rail shooter that replaces bullets and enemies with young horny girls just begging you to pump them full of magical pheromones? That's right, Galgun is back with the complete edition of Galgun Double Piece from P-Cube for $40 freaking dollars. Yes, I am well aware that this is a very popular series with critically acclaimed gameplay. I'm also aware that this is just interactive porn disguised as a well, I guess it really isn't disguised as anything now, is it? Nindie newcomers Sword and Axe released their first game for the Switch with, Fire Emblem. I mean, the game is called Dark Deity, but it's more than just heavily inspired by Fire Emblem. It is Fire Emblem. The battles look more like the older games in the series, while the narrative parts look more like the 3DS entries. It's all about a medieval-era war and grid-based strategy RPG combat, and it's received mixed to positive reviews since dropping on the PC last summer. Being published by Freedom Games, who's also responsible for Dreamscaper, Jetboard Joust, and Godstrike, to name a few, certainly gives me a bit of confidence that the game is at least decent. But for $24.99, I gotta think Dark Deity is a much better fit on platforms that don't already have Fire Emblem.
Edelgard for the win.
Another Nindie newcomer, this one going by Mischief, is bringing their first-person narrative called Adios to the Switch for $17.99. The story, if nothing else, is certainly unique. You play as a pig farmer in the Midwest who is being used by the mob to dispose of bodies, which I guess that means the pigs eat the bodies? Is that a thing? Anyways, you're asked to dispose of another body and you finally decide to say no. From there, you navigate a story assumedly about trying to walk away from the mafia. Like I said, if nothing else, there's no denying its premise is unique. Publisher
Teamy Dory Soft
wants you to roll eggs around in a home that looks like a Windows 95 screensaver in Lost Egg 2 Be Together. At $2.99, it's saved from the no-no list this week because it walks that line where I can't tell if they're genuinely trying to make a good game or not. The whole point is that you and a second player are eggs who roll around, try not to break, and ultimately make your way to your final destination, a frying pan. So it's ostensibly a suicide simulator? I mean, it is described as sad and touching, so I actually think that's what they're going for. Granted, the description also says,
Let's have a pleasant adventure on a fantastic and graceful stage of the world. You will be fascinated by the dependable eggs.
So who knows? I'd say check this game out if you and a friend want to pretend you're on a quest to kill yourselves, but, if that's the case, probably go find someone to talk to about it first. And then a duo of Nindies release on Friday the 18th, with the first being the next game from the team behind the campy full-motion video games like The Complex and 5 Dates. I love these games. Who Pressed Mute on Uncle Marcus is basically a classic whodunit story which was created during lockdown and used that to tell its story from an interesting perspective. A family quiz night has gone awry, and you must interview friends and family members to figure out who offed them. Featuring the great cast that was also in the other Wales Interactive titles, they also add in a couple of B-tier actors from shows like The Office and Once Upon a Time. Jeez, anyone else just flash back to 2011 primetime TV? If you like campy stories and mature yet fun mysteries, I can't imagine you'd be let down by any of this team's titles. And with a lower than usual budget, their latest effort releases for just $11.69. Finally, as per usual, Ratalaika wraps up the week with Wobblyware, who is probably my favorite developer that they partner with, featuring past works such as Devious Dungeon and Omega Strike. This week they branch out into a turn-based RPG with Royal Frontier for $6.99. I'm really intrigued by this game as it approaches the genre in a different, modern yet classic format. So, it's an adventure game with procedurally generated levels, roguelike mechanics, and RPG elements! But it plays more like a board game, or maybe even like the Oregon Trail. Didn't I just say that about something last week? You progress across a map, making decisions about what your party will do and how they might recruit new characters. Then battles take place as traditional turn-based RPG fare. The visuals and music are all fitting, and the presentation is completely charming. I thought Wobblyware's formula was getting a bit long in the tooth by the time they got around to Devious Dungeon 2, and I'm very happy to see them re-emerge with something completely different. Wow. When I was putting together this week's list, I was over on Discord thinking that it wasn't gonna be a very good week, but I've been pleasantly surprised over and over again. Dawn of the Monsters, Cruel King, Wife's Quest, Uncle Marcus, Royal Frontier, there's all kinds of stuff this week, especially considering it's such a slim week quantity-wise. Anything for you? Let me know down in the comments. The deals are slim, but also pretty good this week too, as long as you know where to look. And there's a good amount of variety too. So let's dive right in to the 6 Nindies at their lowest prices ever, on sale through at least March 22nd. Outbuddies DX is one of the most hidden gems out there for the Switch, and is woefully underrated as an 8-bit Metroid-style adventure. It's got great music, a super cool atmosphere, and is developed by a single person. It's a pretty big spacefaring adventure too, and it's great if you were wishing Axiom Verge 2 was a bit more like the original. Clocking in at around 13 hours, it's a great deal this week while it's 67% off for just $5.99. Aspire, Ina's Tale was a surprisingly interesting narrative platformer that we played a couple months back on Nindies at Nite, and though it is very short, just under 3 hours, I really enjoyed my time with it. If you're looking for a mostly serene adventure that mixes cinematic platforming, puzzle solving, and very light combat with a fairly cool story, check it out while it's half off for $6.49. And Nindie Nation's 7th favorite game of 2021 is currently on sale as Trigger Witch drops for $9.74, a 35% discount. This twin-stick shooter has a story, presentation, and soundtrack that absolutely outclasses most of what you can find in the genre, and its progression mechanics are nearly perfect, as you start with a single weak pistol, but end the 8-hour journey feeling like a powerhouse. And it also has one of the wackiest twists I've ever seen in a game. If this gameplay looks even remotely interesting to you, don't miss Trigger Witch. It does not disappoint. We talked about Wobblyware earlier in the episode, and Devious Dungeon was one of the very first Nindies that I took a chance on and then ultimately loved. It's a mindless 2D action game that is great to play while you're watching or listening to something else, is currently 70% off for $2.39, and is loaded to the brim with procedurally generated levels, roguelike mechanics, and RPG elements! But hey, you just want to chill? You just want to roam around and play golf on the wasteland formerly known as Earth? Well, you can do exactly that in Golf Club Wasteland while it's 65% off for $3.49. It's somewhere between golf and a physics puzzler and has a great sense of humor while also being an extremely satisfying game to play. I was very pleasantly surprised by this one, so maybe you'll be too. Last up for the week is a game I often use to remind myself just how long Nindie Nation has been a thing, because Pato Box was the very first game I ever received for coverage, and I had a really great time with it back in July 2018. As you can see, it's got a black and white comic book style and follows a boxing duck through a ridiculous story with gameplay that's basically Punch-Out! They throw in some cool new ideas like walking around the various gyms and locker rooms, which helps build out the story and flesh out some excellently designed characters. With an 85% discount, $2.24 is a fantastic price if you woke up this morning and thought,
You know what? I want to punch a dominatrix in the face as a super buff duck.
And I think we've all been there once or twice now, haven't we? Haven't we? Haven't we? Anyways, let me know what tickles your fancy this week and if there are any other deals you saw that you'd like to share with the class. And don't forget you can always follow Nindie Nation on Twitter, but for the best Nindie discussion, come hang out with us on Discord. Every week we see a few of you join and we appreciate each and every one of you. So if you've been on the fence, I'm talking to you. So hit the link below and come join us. Nindies at Night will be back on Thursday at 10 p.m. Eastern, and we'll be playing Dawn of the Monsters and Wife's Quest. So come join us, hang out for a bit, say hi, meet some new friends, and don't forget to tell Brendan that he's a nerd. Otherwise, citizens, that's it for this week. Thanks so much for watching, liking, subscribing, and sharing Nindie Nation with others. Until next time, I'm Jeff. This has been Nindie Nation episode 141, and remember, no matter what type of game you're looking for, Nindie Nation will be right here to help you find just the thing to keep your Joy-Cons synced.